It is a substitution of our regular business breakfast with the ambassadors. But on the other hand, you perfectly know what is business breakfast. You don't do business, you don't have breakfast. So that's much better to have our Zoom meetings. And today we have a very, very special guest, Ambassador Rob Dixon. He's the ambassador of Her Majesty to Bulgaria. You know, the roots and the nature of the Bulgarian Business Leaders Forum comes from the Prince of Wales International Business Leaders Forum. And we were having excellent relations with the Embassy of Her Majesty, with the ambassadors, of course. And this is our first meeting with almost new Ambassador Rob Dixon. He was appointed Her Majesty's ambassador in March 2020. And he took his post in September 2020, and all we know what happened in March 2020, just a year ago. So obviously his mission coming down to Sofia in September was not very easy. But before that, he was Deputy Director for Africa in the Foreign Office, or Foreign Common and Development Office, between 2016 and 2020, and he was responsible for West Africa. So it's a great experience for a diplomat. Before that, he was Deputy Head of Mission in Israel, Shalom Ambassador. And also between 2010, 2012, he was Private Secretary to the UK National Security Advisor, having previously served as Private Secretary to the Head of the Diplomatic Service. His first overseas assignment was in the United Nations in Geneva, and he worked on the human rights issues. So as you can see, we have a diplomat with a very rich history and experience, and we are really happy to have him here today. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dixon, for accepting the invitation. Before we start our meeting, precisely with the questions and our topics, I would like to invite our chairman, Mr. Hamparchamian, for a couple of words. Levon, voila. If you switch on your microphone, we will hear. If not, we will guess what you're saying.
No, that's fine. I just muted it in order to avoid any difficulties with the sound. But anyway, so thank you very much for everybody. Hello, dear Ambassador. Thank you for accepting our invitation to join us and to have a really interesting discussion on current topics. I believe that we are living in interesting times, according to the Chinese curse. So for good or for bad, the pandemic, political situation, geopolitical situation. But for Bulgaria, this is kind of normal to have challenges. In that corner of the world, things happen. That's how it works. Can I start asking you a question, Your Excellency? You arrived in Bulgaria last summer, which was also kind of challenging for more than one reason. Can you share your first impressions and experience for this?
Levon, colleagues, it's great to be here today. Thank you so much for the invitation to meet the BBLF in this format. It was great to see Levon, Iravan and George, I think back last September or October, yes. Not long after I first arrived, and we made great plans for getting together on a regular basis, and then the pandemic has affected all of us in the way in which we've been doing business. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, and thanks so much for the invitation. And the day will come when we can all get together in a room, I am sure, and you'd be most welcome here at the residence. What are my reflections and impressions since arrival? So I think I'd say probably three things, really. I mean, there's no doubt it's been challenging, right? As a diplomat, as a head of mission, as anybody in a public-facing role, whether that's in government or in business, these are really challenging times in which to operate. For me, that's comprised COVID, but also the end of the UK's transition period out of the European Union, which has created together a series of business challenges, opportunities, I hope also, but also some challenges in the way in which we work. I think the second thing that really jumps out to me from my first few months here is just how rewarding it's been, notwithstanding those challenges. The team here at the British Embassy have been fantastic. The colleagues and contacts I've met have been warm and open and keen to work with the UK, keen to understand what our aspirations are and our place in the world is after the end of the transition period. And really rewarding to get tucked into the issues that on our agenda. I think the third thing I'd say is it's been really inspiring as well, notwithstanding those challenges. Some of the people I've met have been fantastic, particularly groups of young people who are trying to drive change and promote opportunities. And I guess the last thing that I'm really left with is a strong sense, and I knew this before I arrived, but a strong sense that this is a relation that matters. It matters for the UK and it matters for Bulgaria, whether that's in terms of our close cooperation in security and defence, whether that's the way in which we've got large numbers of British nationals living here in Bulgaria and vice versa, significant numbers of Bulgarian nationals living in the UK. And the huge amount of opportunity that I think exists around trade, around tech, around developing those ties across the full range of the relationship. So, I mean, that's a mixture of emotions from challenge to reward to inspiration. But I think, it's been a really, notwithstanding the circumstances, it's been a really positive 8 months. And I'm really looking forward to kick on and build on all of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Levon. Thank you, Ambassador. We cannot prevent the topic about the pandemic and lockdowns and vaccines. And this is something which is even hotter than Brexit, because somehow all we live in this environment that we are asking questions all the time ourselves, and we have contacts with our friends in the United Kingdom. So I would like to ask you, United Kingdom holds one of the prime places for vaccinations now within Europe. I mean, we still think United Kingdom is in Europe because it is in Europe. So how do you manage to do this? I mean, the government or the health authorities or the society, what's the base? What's the reason?
It's a really good question. Thank you for that, Maxim. I think, the pandemic has thrown up some really significant challenges for all of our societies and indeed in the UK. And we mustn't forget that there's been a really significant loss of life in the UK, as there has been across the entire continent and indeed globally. I think there's a lot of positives and hope that we're drawing from the pace of the vaccination program in the UK, and we've developed really close working relationships with AstraZeneca, with Oxford University, as well as all of the major vaccine suppliers. And we're now at a stage where we have managed to, as of last night, deliver 43 million vaccines in the UK. And 10 million of those have had their second dose. I mean, it's a really significant process. And I think what it demonstrates is that, if you get the partnership between government and business and science and innovation right, then actually you can roll these things out at speed. And I think we're really clear that, vaccination is the route to our way out of this pandemic. And I think for me, that sense of the role that government can play in bringing business, in science, the tech sector together to kind of catalyze a a really major response. It's quite inspiring. It's really interesting and significant to watch. I think the other thing that is really important in all of this in relation to the vaccine rollout is, we're not safe until everybody's safe. We're not out of this until everybody's out of this. So, that's absolutely why the UK has been right at the forefront of investing in the COVAX Advanced Market Commitment Facility, raising $1 billion in order to roll out vaccines to some of the poorest countries in the world. And we absolutely have to avoid this situation where vaccines are available for rich countries and not for others, because we've seen already the process of mutation of vaccines. So rolling out those vaccines at pace on a global level is really, really important. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we are in the UK, and we're starting, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, we're starting to see business and life return to some semblance of normality. And I think, as I say, a timely reminder that vaccination is the way through this.
Ambassador, you have different observations on the events happening in Bulgaria, of course, but also you're in the course of the events happening in the United Kingdom, so you can compare. And most probably, the Bulgarian government approach concerning COVID-19 is totally or partly different from the approach in the United Kingdom. Do you see the difference? And do you have your judgment as a diplomat and expert? Which one of the approaches are more relevant, let's say, to the situation?
It's a really good question. And I'm not a medical specialist, I'm not an epidemiologist, and I wouldn't want to pretend that I am. As I say, there are things that we've got right in the UK, and there are things that history may look back and ask questions about. Why 125,000 people have died in the UK from COVID. So I wouldn't want to pretend that the UK has got everything right. I mean, what we have had is a really, really rigorous system of lockdown, of restrictions, some quite tough measures to enforce those restrictions. We are only now just lifting the restrictions that were put in place just before Christmas. And that's had a really big impact on everything from the economy to people's mental health to the ability to see family, friends and loved ones. There's some really tight restrictions on travel. I think one of the things that we have learned as we've gone through that process is the importance of setting out a really clear science-based roadmap. So you give people a sense of what that trajectory is, and test it as you go through, so that if circumstances allow, then you move to the next stage. And if circumstances don't yet allow, you don't move to that next stage. And I think that's been a really important part of the process. I think the other thing that's been interesting in a UK context is the extent to which we've had to coordinate a four-nation approach within the UK, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. It's something that has been new for us, and it's thrown up some important ways in which we need to work. But that's been a big part of the way in which we've been able to control it and make the progress we have with measures at a national level, but also at a local and indeed, nation level as well.
Of course, the societies are suffering. That's no doubt. For the past 1 year, but most visible, the business is suffering as well.
Yeah,
and not mentioning the restaurants, catering, tourism, airline business, and most probably much more even. How do you judge the governmental support of the business? And if you can you don't need to be a medical expert to compare what's happening in the United Kingdom and Bulgaria, if you have observation on the Bulgarian, of course, relations between the business and the government.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no doubt that globally, COVID is having an enormous impact upon the global economy. upon production, upon supply chains, upon ways of doing business, upon operating models. There's a profound moment of disruption in the global economy, and that has an impact at a local level, and it has an impact at a national level. I mean, clearly the hope and the aspiration has got to be that as restrictions can be lifted, you know, some of the capital that's been locked up in markets or in people's private bank accounts can be a driver for growth in the future. I think what we have done in the UK has, and many governments have done this in different ways in reflection of their own circumstances, has been to put in some really big scale support to the UK economy. You know, numbers, the kind of numbers which probably thought after the global economic crisis in 2008, 2009 would be sort of unimaginable. But you know, there are big schemes we've put in place around job retention, where you know, the government will support 80% of a furloughed employee's wages up to £2,500 a month, and that's gone on over the course of the entire crisis. And in many ways, you know, the state has stepped in to support business and ensure that people have got money in their pockets, so that they are able to continue to live and look after their families, but also they've got the basis on which to kind of come back. We've protected jobs as we've gone through. And what we've tried to do is to put in place schemes like this throughout different levels of the economy, whether that's for apprentices, for trainees, enhancing sick pay. I mean, these are the things that are expensive, but they give people the assurance that they've got money in their pocket. We've also put in place a really big economic stimulus as well, for smaller businesses. Businesses with an annual turnover of no more than £45 million can borrow up to £5 million interest free from 12 months. And you know, these are big loans if you put that across the scope of the economy. And we've been putting in some big support as well to large scale companies also. So, you know, every government has approached this in different ways, and Bulgaria has found its own way through this as well, reflecting the circumstances of its own economy. What is no doubt, however, I think that for all economies, you know, this is a really big burden, sustaining businesses, firms, employees through this period of change and transition. So the sooner we can come through this through vaccination and observance of social distancing, the restrictions, etc., the better it will be for the economy and for society writ large.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Of course, our members, we have almost 40 people on the conference call now on Zoom. Our members will be able to put different questions, but before that, I would just like to stop on a topic which we cannot miss during our meeting, especially after almost 4 months after the event happened at the end of last year called Brexit. And just a short stop on Brexit, the first and the most important question would be how everything happening around this for the past couple of years, because it happened at the end of last year, but at the end of the day, it is prolonging for the past couple of years. How it will reflect on the Bulgarian-British business relations? That's what is concerned us at most.
Yeah. It's a really good question. And I think it's, you know, it's something that's absolutely at the front of my mind in thinking about the relationship, the partnership writ large. So, you know, what does our security partnership look like beyond the end of the transition period? How are we going to cooperate? What is the exchange like at a political level? How will our citizens be able to operate in the two countries, given the changes that we've gone through? And a really, really significant part of this picture is, of course, is business. We start from a place of, I'd say, relative strength in that, as you will know better than I, that bilateral trade has grown sort of 50% over the last 5 years. So we went into the period of the Brexit transition and indeed COVID from a position of relative strength. Clearly, I think that there is opportunity and scope for much greater growth in the trade relationship between the UK and Bulgaria. And I certainly hope that as we come through the uncertainties of the transition period and through the COVID restrictions, where I think both have had the effect on creating uncertainty, suppressing investment decisions, giving people pause to wait, that I hope as we come through this, that we will start to see greater investment in both directions and growth. I think what I would say on the end of the kind of the Brexit period, the end of the transition period, is that, I mean, it goes without saying, but obviously the achievement of an agreement between the UK and the EU on Christmas Eve last year was great news. The alternative was really significant, would have had a significant impact upon wide aspects of business and life more broadly. And I think the TCA provides a solid basis to move forward. It gives companies and individuals an opportunity to plan from that basis. There are, of course, changes. There are changes in the way in which you do business, the way in which you move goods, the way in which people move. But I think my job as ambassador, the job of the team, the UK government writ large, is through engagements with groups such as yourself and other business leaders, is to communicate what those new systems are. I think we will not yet know the full impact until we come through this COVID period a little bit more clearly. Clearly, that has a major set of implications for the way in which people work, live, travel, and operate. But I do see plenty of opportunity going forward for the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ambassador. But obviously, there are many problems with Brexit, and most probably there are certain advantages. We never know. But if you are about to allocate one of the problems and one of the advantages, what would be they?
So I think for the UK, one of the advantages has been the ability to, outside the European Union, to make our decisions ourselves closer to home about what our global priorities are, whether that's in the political space, whether that's in terms of our trade relationships with other countries around the world. We're in the process of negotiating free trade agreements with a significant number of countries around the world at the moment. It's now up to us as the UK and with those partners to determine the terms of that, and in ways that reflect the needs, the strengths, the opportunities of the UK economy. I think one of the challenges, of course, that the end of the transition period has thrown up, happening alongside COVID, has been a degree of uncertainty around some of the new rules. Some of those are COVID related. Some of those are new regulations and rules that are in place in relation to the movement of people or goods. And the deal happened pretty late in the day. So to communicate those changes, those requirements out to businesses and to individuals so that they can take stock of those and reflect those and implement those have been, those are real challenges, and we're working really hard to try and achieve that. My sense is that business is getting a greater understanding of what the new rules and the new systems and requirements are, but that's a process. We will keep working at that.
Do you think that the current COVID environment or situation created some new business opportunities between the United Kingdom and Bulgaria at all, except the import of the British-made vaccines?
It's a really good question. And I think, I see beyond COVID, I see a number of big opportunities here in Bulgaria for UK business. I think one of the big things that COVID has accelerated is that recognition that we're going to need to change some of our ways of working, our economic model, more online, more digital, less face-to-face. So the operating processes are going to change. But I also think there's a really big move at a global level to use the phrase to build back better. And it's a really powerful opportunity with the end of, hopefully the end of the pandemic, the increase in funding here in Bulgaria, hopefully in recovery and reconstruction. And I think a global recognition that we need to take some big steps on the environment and on climate. That itself is a potential driver of growth. And I see some big opportunities for UK business around tied to that recovery, whether that's in terms of green technology, low emission transportation, more efficient energy systems, smart city solutions. I also see, that COVID has been a big driver of innovation in the healthcare space. So digitalization of healthcare services is something that the UK has some real added advantage on. And I think COVID has demonstrated also the strength of the UK science, tech and development offer. And I think there's an opportunity there for us to bring some of that to bear in the Bulgarian marketplace. So I do see opportunities. I see an enormous amount of change. It's very unpredictable, as I'm sure all of your members will recognize. But there is something in this process, hopefully, of coming out of the pandemic, this moment of hopefully building back better, that enables, I think, the UK to deploy some of its big high-tech solutions, hopefully in the Bulgarian marketplace.
Thank you, Ambassador. Can I take the liberty just to have a 1-minute break to announce you the suggestions for the new government?
Please.
As we know, the Prime Minister, you know the name of the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
But now the Minister of Defense suggested Rumen Hristov, who is the audience, they most probably, you as well, know Rumen Hristov is the leader of the rightist party cooperating with GERB. Then the Minister of Culture will be the famous drummer and percussion, or whatever is the name, Kalim Velyov. Minister of Tourism, Lyuben Dilov. And then Alexander Ivanov, I don't know who is he, Minister for Regional Development. Ivelina Vassilieva, Minister of Environment. Zhechu Stankov, first time I hear this name, Minister of Economy. Dilan Dobrev, Minister of Energy. And then the same positions are kept by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zakharieva, Finance, Ananiev, Sacheva, Social Minister, Legal, or Minister of Justice stays as well, Akhmadova, Krasen Kralev, Minister of Sport, Agricultural Minister stays as well, Taneva, Educational Minister Volchev keeps his portfolio, Transportation Zhelyaskov, and the Health Minister as well. There are some. We will see whether they will make government, but because Borisov is making just a press conference from the hospital live, so that's why, and I apologize, I just made a political break.
Not at all.
In our purely business conversation. Let me ask you some concrete figures and numbers. Will we have certain taxes or additional duties or obligations exporting Bulgarian goods to the United Kingdom? We have a lot of producers within the Bulgarian Business Leaders Forum.
Yeah. So, I think the really good news about the deal that was achieved just before Christmas is that it includes zero tariffs, zero quotas, and that's pretty unprecedented in terms of a deal of this scale, of this magnitude. And it's a huge amount represents a big move towards tariff liberalisation in EU FTAs. It's not something that the EU itself has always pursued. Of course, all of these things are subject to rules of origin. And in all FTAs, there are rules of origin to avoid, as you will know, goods produced in another country unfairly benefiting from those tariff reductions. So whilst the trade between the UK and the EU in goods is absolutely zero tariff and zero quota, those rules of origin do specify that there's a minimum amount of UK or EU content that's required for the product to be considered as it originating from either market. A product that is produced or grown here in Bulgaria would fall within the terms of those rules of origin. A product that is assembled in the UK with component parts from a number of other countries may not fall within the terms of those rules of origin, depending upon the percentage of content from another market. What we think is that there's actually a pretty small number of products, particularly in the trade between the UK and Bulgaria, that are likely to have significant inputs from outside of the UK or EU marketplaces. And we're working closely with business, both here in the UK, to ensure that people understand what the situation is. So there's quite a lot of complexity around that. I mean, the headline is there's no tariffs, there's no quotas, but there is an issue around where items have component parts from and whether they meet the rules of origin. One thing that I am aware of, and it is just worth pausing on, is that I know that some haulage companies, and I'm sure your members will recognise this, some freight companies for their logistics and freight services, where they are shipping products that fall outside of the rules of origin, they may be levying additional charges because of the additional paperwork related to products that fall outside of those rules of origin. The headline is that apart from VAT levied on alcohol and tobacco, there's no additional taxes, there's no additional tariffs, there's no additional duties or charges levied by the public purse in the UK or in Bulgaria, as long as those products meet the rules of origin.
What about the online trades? Because all of us, we are buying, I mean, I buy books and many other things from Amazon.co.uk.
Yeah.
And even the transportation company, which was bringing goods from the United Kingdom to Bulgaria by trucks, they stopped the service from New Year. So what will be the situation? I mean, it's very important indeed.
Yeah, so we saw some disruption around distribution and shipping companies. Some of that was COVID driven. Some of that was uncertainty. And some companies just stopped for a period whilst they've decided to work out how the process works. Companies will take commercial decisions about whether they want to continue operating in a fashion that they did before. There's quite a bit of complexity around this question.
Yes.
But I'll go through it just so that people do understand it. The basic principle is that there's no customs duty or VAT on shipments under 30 lev. From the 1st of July this year, VAT will start to apply for shipments below the 30 lev mark. For shipments between 30 lev and 150 euros, they are subject to a 20% VAT, but here in Bulgaria, but they're exempt from customs duty. Big shipments over 150 euros are subject to customs duties according to the customs tariff. So there is some complexity around this. There is some change. It impacts on all of us, myself included. But I think the fundamental point remains that we're going through a period of a sort of education and understanding for both consumers, but also hauliers, distribution companies so that they understand what is required. And I think also people are starting to get used to, slowly by slowly, some of the rules around origin as well, and where you may require a statement of origin from a supplier in the UK in order to demonstrate that you don't have to pay you don't have to pay rules of origin charges. So there's some changes there, and it is complicated, but we're busy trying to communicate what is in play.
And the last question of this part, and then we move to our members, of course. What will happen with the business trips? Will be there any changes, or shall we expect waiting in front of the British consulate for visa, like it was 20 whatever years ago, big lines just in front of Levski Street?
So those days have gone, and indeed the building that you used to queue for has gone as well. So I mean, firstly, all visa applications are online these days, but I think the really important thing, and this will be of real relevance to your members, because I know that in normal times people will travel back and forth between the UK a lot. As EU citizens, Bulgarians can continue to visit the UK for up to 6 months without applying for a visa. I mean, that's really important. So whether it is to, go visit family and friends, to go and enjoy the UK, whether it's for short-term study or for business-related activities such as events and conferences, you do not need a visa for up to 6 months. So, that's the baseline. I think that provides quite a lot of certainty, I hope, for the business community. But what that means in practice is that you can attend meetings, conferences, seminars, interviews, give short talks, attend trade fairs, carry out site visits. As long as you're not earning in that process, if you're doing promotional work, you don't need a visa.
Then we promise we will not impose visa for British citizens as well.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you.
So thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I'm reading that our Deputy Director, Gabriela, has a question. Gabi? By the way, if you have any questions, there is a chat possibility also, so you can put your questions in the chat. Please, Gabi.
Yes, Ambassador, thank you very much for your time, and I would like to ask you a question about the UK universities, because they are very popular among the Bulgarian students, and we have a lot of students who are already in UK. How Brexit will affect the study in UK? And
so it's a really good question. It's a really good question. No, thank you for that, Gabi. I think my starting point on this is that the UK and Bulgaria share, I think, a lot of strengths in terms of science and the higher education sector. And one of the things that I was surprised about when I first arrived is the number of students studying in universities in both directions. So there's about 6,000 Bulgarian students studying in UK universities, which is great, and we absolutely want that to continue. There's also about 2,500 British students studying here in Bulgaria, which is a much unreported and unknown kind of fact. I think it speaks to the strength of the Bulgarian university sector as well, particularly in medicine, which is what a lot of these students come for. First thing really about the future for students is that for EU nationals and their family members who are lawfully resident in the UK prior to the end of the transition period, so December 2020, they're covered by the withdrawal agreement. So, and they can still apply for residency status under the terms of the withdrawal agreement until the end of June this year. And there's already around about 250,000 Bulgarian nationals in the UK who've registered under the terms of under the withdrawal agreement. What that means is that people who are registered under those terms can continue to live, to work, to operate, and crucially, in relation to your question, study, including for children of people, family members who are registered in the UK. So if you're a Bulgarian citizen and you're working and you've got young children, if they are registered under the terms of the withdrawal agreement, when they reach university age, they will count as home students for the point of their university entry. That's the first thing. Second thing I'd say is that for students coming to the UK to study from the 1st of January this year, they need to apply for a student visa. And that's a relatively straightforward process, takes about 3 weeks. You can apply for the visa up to 6 months before your course starts. You'll need to demonstrate that you've got a licensed sponsor, i.e. you're attending a genuine institution, that you've got the money to support yourself and to pay for your fees, that you can speak, read and write and understand English. And if you are if you're 16 or 17, so below university age, you've got the consent of your parents. So there is a process, and that process is working well. Where there is a change is in relation to funding. The UK is outside of the EU now. We're a third country, which means that as a matter of principle, European students don't count as home students in the way in which they used to. The exception to that is those people who are registered under the terms of the withdrawal agreement, who will continue to be considered as home students. So it will vary from university to university what fees they are charging. Some universities are continuing to charge European Union students home fees in order to encourage them to continue to come. And people who are interested in studying in the UK, firstly, I'd absolutely recommend it because we've got some of the best universities in the world. But secondly, you should talk to the university to see what the funding route is, because not everybody is necessarily applying that third country rate. I hope that helps. There's quite a lot there, but it depends a little bit on what category you're in. But as a matter of sort of principle, we think the UK's got a fantastic offer in terms of its universities, and we really want Bulgarian students to keep coming and benefiting from that, because I know that they gain a lot from that experience.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. There is a question in the chat by Dr. Georgiev. The UK universities were substantial participants in. Do you read the chat, Ambassador, or shall I read the question?
I can read it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So it's a good question. It's a good question around the Erasmus scheme, and the replacement for the Turing scheme. The deal provides for the UK's participation in certain programs, certain educational science research programs, including Horizon Europe, which is a big investment program for science and for tech, but also for some of the science programs around Copernicus, Euroatom, and those key big programs. So the UK will continue to be part of that. There is a change in relation to the Erasmus Plus scheme. However, it was not possible to reach agreement with the European Union about the terms of the UK's future participation in that. We've taken the decision to put in place a scheme, the Turing scheme, named after Alan Turing, a famous British scientist, to enable British students to be able to travel to work overseas, to travel and study overseas, rather. In a way, it's kind of up to European countries and our friends and partners, including here, to see whether they might reciprocate and put in place a similar sort of scheme to allow their students to study overseas, including in the UK. What I would say is that there's been a fairly small number historically of Bulgarian students who've benefited from from the Erasmus scheme in terms of their study in the UK. So this change in and of itself, I don't think has a huge impact, but there are, of course, wider changes that do impact on people thinking about studying in the UK.
Thank you very much. George?
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your absolutely precious time and for the good information you give to our BBLF members. I want to, of course, difficulties and the problems are a lot. I want to move a little bit to the nice part of the life. You have a chance to probably to travel around the country. What fascinated you the most in Bulgaria, for example?
Gosh, that's a good question. So I feel like, and it's very nice to see you, George. I feel like I'm just touching the surface. I'll be honest at the moment. I mean, I spent about a year learning Bulgarian before I came to Bulgaria, studying Bulgarian every day for 12 months. And to actually be here and to meet people, to speak the language, engage with the culture, to understand a bit more, I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm one of those diplomats who likes to be out and about to engage people, to understand what's going on, to try and get a bit of a feel of what makes people and the country tick. And I've been able to do a bit of that, perhaps less than I would have wanted to because of COVID, frankly. But what I have been able to do, I've enjoyed enormously. I think Bulgaria is also, you will know this, but it's also a hidden gem. It's an incredibly beautiful country. And from what we've seen in the mountains and out and about around the country, it's great. And I can't wait to get out and do a bit more of that, getting under the skin, getting to know people, but also a bit more of the exploration.
Great, thank you, please, dear friends. One more question from Annie Ivanova. What fascinated you the most in Bulgaria? Your top three.
Oh gosh,
people.
What's fascinated me?
People. That's the top three.
I think it's people. I mean, I think like many people in business, but also diplomacy, it's fundamentally about people and understanding them. And I think understanding people's priorities in a period of considerable change and challenge, I think I found fascinating. Learning new cultural traditions, I think is very interesting. I mean, they are quite different. The Balkan context is quite different from the UK and where else I have served previously. So that's hugely fascinating. I mean, I think it's as a British diplomat, it's a brilliant place to be posted because there's an awful lot going on. And that opportunity to try to set the agenda and the direction for this period after we've left the European Union, I think is itself a hugely fascinating challenge.
I hope you enjoyed the food, Bulgarian food. Huh?
I do. Thank you. Maybe a bit too much.
Maria is asking what would be the impact of Brexit and COVID-19 on the interest of the UK investment to Bulgaria?
Over the last 10 years, the UK has been one of the biggest investors in Bulgaria, one of the 5 largest investors in Bulgaria. And indeed, I think for some of the last figures in 2019, the last pre-COVID figures in 2019, we were actually the second biggest foreign investor in Bulgaria. I think what a combination of COVID and Brexit has done is, firstly, there's been a fall in the value and volume of trade. Some of that, I think, is a reflection of that investment uncertainty that we've all been through. I think some of it is also a reflection of some big stockpiling before the end of the transition period, and we're starting to see the February trade statistics, things recovering and recovering quite sharply, which I think is a reflection that companies are getting used to the new regulations, the new rules, the new processes and procedures. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic about the opportunities that exist here in Bulgaria for UK investments, and indeed vice versa. That's what I'd really like to also encourage, is to get Bulgarian producers to be thinking about the UK market as well. So I think we've got quite a lot of work to do in order to keep explaining new rules, keep explaining opportunities. But I am optimistic that those opportunities are there in both directions.
Thank you very much. Two more questions in the chat. One of them by Iravan Hira from Hewlett Packard is too long, so I would ask, if possible, Ambassador, just to pay attention to the question by Mr. Hira, and also, of course, our participants. And then one short question from Bojidar from PricewaterhouseCoopers. His name here is Bojo. Okay.
Just trying to find the question in the chat. Bear with me one moment. I'm attempting to do this on.
If you click,
I'm attempting to do this on my iPad. So the question is from Iran about COP26. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Great question. So the short answer to Iravan's question is absolutely. The COP26, the Global Climate Conference in Glasgow this year, is a major moment for the UK, bringing the world together to try to agree some ambitious targets on climate change. But it's also a major, I think, moment for us globally. We're engaged in a number of things here in Bulgaria with an attempt, frankly, to try to influence and maybe shift the debate and level of ambition towards greater aspiration in relation to the environment. And I see opportunity here, both in terms of influencing the debate, but also creating business opportunity as well. So we're engaged with civil society, with local municipalities. We ran and are continuing to run a series of engagements between coal-producing municipalities here in Bulgaria and some of those regions in the UK that have been through what has been in the UK a difficult process of coal transition, to share experience and ideas in order to be able to pass on best practice. We're also engaging with a number of municipalities throughout Bulgaria on sort of smart city solutions, and in particular, low emission transportation. And there's quite a lot of interest I see in the use of hydrogen to drive transportation, but also to drive other forms of fuel. And this is something that I think Bulgaria has got a potential added value around, and may even, through green hydrogen, represent a fuel export from Bulgaria that could be a driver for growth elsewhere. So there's a lot going on, and COP26 is one of our big priorities as an embassy here in Sofia. What I do see is that tying it into business opportunity as well. So encouraging the country, society writ large, to be open to living in a more environmentally sustainable way, opens up business opportunities, whether that's in transportation, whether that's in technology, whether that's in smart city solutions. And it just so happens that the UK has got a huge amount to offer in that space. So that's where I see very much our trade promotion and our investment strategy moving towards here in Bulgaria in support of our wider objectives on the environment.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before moving to the next question, I really would like to thank all the participants for switching their cameras on, because I mean, we are doing Zoom meetings from early morning until late night, and it's very rare, very exceptional to see 90% of the participants having their cameras on, because usually, you know, that they switch off their cameras and all of us, we do millions of things and we listen, but don't participate. So thanks a lot. We have Christina Pejcheva with her vision, vertical, not horizontal, but still we can recognize her, even vertical. Oh, thank you very much, Christina. And also we have Alexander Bozhilov, Dimitar Naidenov, our friends Snezhana Shtonova, not switching their cameras. By the way, whoever has any problem with the camera and doesn't have camera or something like that, then I'm sending as a present for free a camera from myself. It's a personal present. So whoever doesn't have camera, just send me an email or drop me a line on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. I'll send you a present, a camera. So next question is from Pricewaterhouse, Bojidar. Further to the previous questions concerning investment, any sectors you expect to be of particular interest for the British investors? I guess, Bojidar.
So great to see you all. I've just moved my screen across and now I can see all the faces staring at me. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. I mean, I do see a number of opportunities for UK investment here in Bulgaria. I mean, the classic sort of areas for investment, UK investments, have been around tourism. They've had a big impact, been heavily affected during the pandemic. That will change, that will grow. I'm sure it will come back, and we're all looking forward to that day. But I do see opportunities, as I say, relating back to the previous question around digital. You know, we know that Bulgaria is a growing location for digital services, for near sourcing services, and we do see that there's a real opportunity to expand that further. We see Bulgaria developing through the Sofia Tech Park, its own little cluster of drivers of innovation. The UK has got a lot of experience and great fintech investment capability in the UK. And I see that as an area in which there is opportunity for further partnership and further growth. We've run some great opportunities around fintech. And I think there's a lot building on that around IT services as well, the way in which Bulgaria can be a growing hub for the provision of IT services for many of the companies, I'm sure, that are represented on this call. So I do see real opportunities there. I think the last bit, just to touch on what I was saying a moment ago, is that there is something around the green recovery piece that I think is going to be a significant part of all of our economies going forward, but also I do see, maybe not right now, but in a few years' time, that this is going to be a bigger slice of the Bulgarian marketplace. And I think that there's great opportunity for the UK in that space. So plenty of opportunities, some that need growing. But I'm, as I say, I am optimistic about the future.
Thanks a lot. So we may have one or two questions time, I think. By the way, one more thing which surprises me a lot. Usually, Ambassador, after the first half an hour, half of the participants are leaving. But this time we have all of them here. So it's a good sign that it's quite interesting speech. And thank you again. So please, ladies and gentlemen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maxim. Let's lead in natural way to my question, since you alluded on a couple of times about the interest Your Excellency created. Thank you so much for being our guest. So I will go back slightly to the time when Dick and Arabella Stack arrived in Bulgaria, and they promised to open up the embassy and to make it as a clubbing community.
Yep.
So, and they established excellent tradition by inviting senior officials from the government, experts to share their know-how and knowledge from different areas. Now, today we witness quite nice clubbing discussions with you. And my question to you is, shall we take all the advantages of the digital environment and digital reality we are living, and to continue organizing and hosting some nice discussions with experts from healthcare, from education, from climate change topics, all of the investment opportunities which have been today as part of the questions or part of your expose?
Zoya, thank you so much, and great to see you. I would love to do that. I mean, we've been trying in certain areas to bring people together for online meetings. A lot of it has been COP focused, a lot of it has been end of the transition period focused. But I think absolutely working with this group, bringing together decision makers from governments, I think would be a great opportunity, and I would love to do that. I mean, I see the residence as a British house. I just happen to live upstairs, but it's a platform. It's a platform for people to come together, to meet, to engage and share ideas. And I really hope that we will get back to that space where we can actually see each other face to face, and I can learn from all of you much more about what those opportunities are. In the meantime, yes, absolutely. Let's do more together online. I'm sure we would all love another online meeting, but I think that's the way in which we're working at the moment. And I'd be delighted to bring together groups of you plus decision makers. So great idea. Very happy to.
Dear friends, one more last question.
Maxime, can I make a comment here?
Absolutely, Gilbert.
Right. Okay. As someone who's been in Bulgaria for quite a while, in fact, I see Dickie Stagg's name has come up a few times, and he was the ambassador when I first arrived here. But I think that one of the very interesting points has come up today, forgetting about Brexit and COVID for a while, because we're trying to look into the future here, is the IT sector, fintech you've mentioned. There's a lot of opportunity in Bulgaria, a lot of, the time that I've been here, huge number of shared service centers being opened up in the country, many of them going back to a British parent, other countries as well, of course, but that's one of the main areas. And also, I think the point I would make is there's a lot of IT companies here and all kinds, it could be medical, it could be fintech, who are generally small, but they're very enthusiastic to do extra business. They're good, and that's one of the things I like about the sector here, is they're good at collaborating with each other. And I know a number of these companies have good contracts with, I mean, they tend to be relatively small, so they're acting as subcontractors or partnering with others. By their niche markets, they can be very useful to larger British companies there. So I think that's a market that can be expanded and can also be promoted. A certain amount can be done through British Chambers of Commerce and things like that. But I certainly think that that's something that in terms of improving the trade relationship with Britain is an area that is as good as any in terms of looking at and expanding.
Gilbert, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's absolutely right. I think that there is there's real value added in what Bulgaria has in this in all of the sectors that you've just described. And we've seen, I think, growing numbers of young, educated, tech-savvy Bulgarians choosing to work in these sectors from Bulgaria rather than necessarily go overseas. And I think the related consequence of that is we're starting to see growth in skill sets in a cohort that makes companies from the UK and elsewhere think hard about investing in Bulgaria, and in particular in Sofia, not exclusively Sofia, to be a centre for all of those areas that you describe. And I think, that as we come out of the pandemic has got to be among the key areas that we are pushing hard for greater investment, greater partnership and engagement. My sense is there's quite a lot of companies that are, and you will all know this better than me, that are waiting that are waiting to take sort of big decisions about investment. Many are not. Many are using the opportunity of the pandemic to retool themselves for the future. But I certainly think that as we come out, that's exactly the set of areas that we need to be pushing for the future.
Thank you. So, dear friends, we are about the end of our very interesting meeting with Ambassador Rob Dixon. First of this set with him. And thank you very much, Ambassador. I will give the floor to our chairman, Levon, for a couple of closing words. But we really appreciate this meeting, and we hope to see you soon at the business breakfast. And we'll do business and we'll have breakfast.
Fantastic. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for all of the great questions.
Levon.
And we're at your disposal, whether as a group or individually, in any way we can support you.
Microphone, Levon. Boss, switch on your microphone. No, we don't hear you. We know what you say. We know what you say. You say it was very interesting. You say thank you very much for the participation. You say I'll see you very soon during our next meeting. I know that, but you don't have a mic. I'll send you a mic, not a camera, as a present. No, something happened, Levon. Anyway, next time, or you send it, you can send it either in the chat or you send it by email. Try again? No, we don't hear you. Не те чуваме, брачет. Anyway, it happens.
Well, we've done very well to get through this meeting without the tech gremlins affecting us. So to get right to the end is some achievement.
So, Ambassador, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much, and wish you best of luck in this beautiful country with this amazing people. And dear friends from Bulgarian Business Leaders Forum, on behalf of Levon and the board, thank you very much and have a successful day.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank
you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Bye.
See you in person.
Левон, секунда. Ще го пуснем,
Сега да не ме чуват.
Сега се чува.
Ми трябваше да рестартирам цялото нещо.
Нищо, няма проблем.
Sorry. Живи и здрави, хубав ден на всички. И така.
Да, всичко най-хубаво.
Чао.
Чао.